Hey, everybody. I'm Chris Charbonneau, the associate publisher for Fish Talk magazine, otherwise known as Sharb the Barb. And we're here for another episode of Live with Lenny. But before we bring Lenny on, I want to thank our sponsor, Suzuki Marine. And not many of you, you probably know this, but if you go onto our website, we have a little bit of a resource page for Suzuki, and there's really not a better time to go check this out than right now. Now, I'm going to show you the link right there. And sorry for covering up your logo, Suzuki, but it's kind of a long link, and I thought, let's try something different. So really, it's easy enough to find. When you go to the homepage for fishtalkmag.com, go up into the search box and just type in Suzuki, and it's going to bring you here. This is our landing page, and on here is just a fantastic deal to repower your boat. If you're looking to do that, this is the time to contact your Suzuki dealer. So here's your landing page. It tells you all about the deal, and you just scroll down. You get all your Suzuki dealers obviously listed alphabetically, but if you click for the regional map, well, you get a regional map, and you can just zoom in, zoom out, find which dealer is closest to you, and go get yourself a new Suzuki, and tell them Fish Talk sent you, because that really helps us out. So anyhow, all right. Well, I think it's time that we bring on our angler-in-chief, the legendary Mr. Lenny Rudo. Ooh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Chris. I had an early lunch, and the crabs were just waiting. I couldn't resist. Sorry, guys. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm all right, Lenny. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good.
Speaking of crabs, by the way, I got a small taste of the crab dip that you had given others, and oh my.
Good stuff, right?
Well, I went in for another bite, and it was gone.
Nice.
That was a crab feeder.
I love it.
Yeah.
Email me. I'll give you the recipe.
Ooh, folks, email Lenny to get this recipe, because
not a problem.
It was fantastic. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk some fishing, Chris.
All right. Well, I'll just jump off.
All right. Well, there goes Chris. Today, folks, we're going to talk about summer trolling, and this is going to play a big role for a lot of folks because, as everybody knows, rockfish is soon going to go out of style. We're going to have a 2-week closure in the state of Maryland. In Virginia, they're already out. They've been out for a while. And folks are going to need some alternatives to troll for. Now, as we get into this, let's go to slide number 1 when you can, please, Chris. And I want to introduce everybody to Walt. This is Walt holding up a Spanish mackerel here. And this guy, he's got that engineering brain. And we were talking about finding the right speed for trolling for mackerel, which, everybody says troll fast. What does that mean? Some guys say troll at 7 miles an hour. Some guys say troll at 8 miles an hour. Some guys, you see them practically trolling on plane, It's hard to know what's really the best speed for mackerel. So Walt applied his big fat science brain to this, and he found the answer. We call it max speed. Can you take me to the next slide, please, Chris, and make it big? Make that sucker big. Make it take up the whole screen. Walt not only graphed it, he even gave us a great little skunk up at the top for no fish if you're going too fast, and bluefish at the bottom if you're going too slow. Now, here's how it works. Okay, this is max speed. And by the way, Walt kept track of all the bites and all the speeds and whatnot throughout a couple seasons, and took all the numbers and jiggled them together and made this great chart for us. And what it comes down to is, look at the water temperature on your fish finder. Okay, subtract 5 from that number, and then divide it by 10. Here's your example. You're in 86-degree water. Knock off 5, you get 81. Divide 81 by 10, you get 8.1. Max speed is 8.1 miles an hour. And people, it works. It absolutely positively works. Walt did do a feature article for us on this. I think it was year before last. Chris, do we have the link to that article available? I think we might have the link ready so folks can go and read the entire article. If not, maybe we can get Zach to pop it up in the comments at some point. And I forgot to mention before, folks, feel free to chime in with your comments on Facebook or on YouTube. Chris will relay the questions to me, and we will get all of your questions answered. All right.
I'll try and get that link up here very soon.
Okay. Well, we can just pop it into the comments at some point so folks can get to it. And all right, Chris, why don't you go ahead and take us on to the next slide here. So what you see here is a wake behind my boat. Oh, look at that. Suzuki's. Funny coincidence, right? No, actually, I've got them on my boat. I've had them on my boat for years. They've got well over 3,000 hours on them and running strong. They are beauts. But I just wanted to show this picture so you could see the wake behind the boat. We're actually doing around 8.5 miles an hour on this day. You can see the ships in the background. It's right outside of Annapolis, near where all the ships anchor up. Last couple of years, that's been a really good spot for the mackerel. They've been in there in pretty decent numbers. And so that might be one you want to check out. Keep your eye on the reports. I will put it in there, as soon as we figure out where the mackerel are. They're coming. They're coming. We have the reports coming out tomorrow. I was crunching them this afternoon after my daughter Molly, she gathers the information for me. She puts it all together, sends it to me. I was going through it, and we had a report of 4 mackerel on one boat, 6 mackerel on another boat in the area of Smith Point. And the week before that, we heard of a boat with 2 mackerel from the mouth of the Potomac. So those fish are heading up. They're heading north. Right now, they're getting them real good down towards the CBBT. But they're heading north. So, you guys who are farther north, just hang tight here. Hopefully they'll be here in time for the rockfish closure. All right, Chris, go ahead and take us to the next slide, would you please? So what you see here is mackerel. I'm just holding him down on the deck of the boat after we caught him. On the right, you can see that spoon. That's a drone spoon. You want to use your little drones, your number 1s, basically any small spoon between, say, 2 and 3 inches. You really don't want to get much bigger than that. These fish are chewing on bay anchovies. Okay, they go after the anchovies a lot more than they're going to go after like a bunker. So you want to imitate those bay anchovies. The one here you see, it's silver. That's a good choice. We'll talk a little more about color in a minute, but the bottom line is stick with those small spoons when you're mackerel trolling. That is the ticket. All right, Chris, could you take us to the next, please? Here you see, you might recognize that funny looking guy. You can just see in the back the planer hanging off the rod. This right here is well, what I'm holding in my hand, this right here is a Sea Striker number 1. You're going to want number 1s, and you're also going to want probably to have some 2s on board, and definitely number 3s. The 3s will really put a bend in your rod. They put a lot of pressure on it, but they're valuable. They're very valuable to have. You can't really see the leader in here, but I want to talk about that for a minute because it's critically important. You have got to have a ball bearing swivel halfway down your leader. We're talking like a 15, 18-foot leader. Just cut it halfway and tie in a ball bearing swivel. I'm not talking about your cheap 10-cent barrel swivel. Those won't help you. You got to have your $1.50 ball bearing swivel. It's painful to buy them, I know. But that's the only way to keep the twist out of the line. And, a lot of guys say don't put a swivel right in front of the spoon. It interferes with the spoon's action. That may be true. I'm honestly not sure. But I do put a ball bearing swivel in front of the spoon too, one with a clip. I put it right in front of the spoon as well. And then I put one on the back of this planer. So I've actually got 3 ball bearings swivels in between the spoon and the planer. And this is really critical because when you're trolling at these fast mackerel speeds, that spoon is just going, and if you don't have ball bearings in there, you're going to have a big giant tangle mess. And I'm not talking about the kind of tangle mess where you just undo it and put the line back out. I'm talking about the kind of tangle mess where you look at it and you just cut it off and throw it away and rig a whole new leader. It's pretty horrific. the messes these little spoons at these speeds can make. So this is really a critical item. Got to have the swivels. And what we're talking about here is not just having to undo a tangle and tackle failure and spending more money on leader and all that. What we're talking about here is catching more fish, because if you're sitting there for 15 minutes messing around with your gear trying to recover from a massive tangle, what's happening is you got less lines in the water, right? Part of really racking up the numbers on the Spanish is keeping all your lines in the water active at all times, unless you're reeling them in because you have a fish on the end of the line. All right, Chris, take us to the next slide, would you please? And let's make this big. Let's make this big because this is important. All right, so on the right, you can see Zach Ditmars, our Fish Talk production manager, art king, and excellent angler and resident kayak sharpie. He got off the kayak for a day to come fishing with me. And on the left, you see my son Max. And it looks like he's fighting a fish, but he's not. What he's actually doing there is setting a number 3 planer. He just got it to set. You can see how it's making the rod bend like crazy. And the reason I wanted to throw this slide up here is because you see the other 2 rods, which have less of a bend to them. That's because they're running number 1s. This is another critical component of avoiding the big giant mega tangle mess. And this is a multi-line tangle mess here we're talking about. What you want to do is when you're setting your lines, put out your number 1s first. Okay? Put those aft on the boat, like the ones you see here. They're back towards the transom. Put them aft. Put them back 100, 120 feet, something like that. Always set them out first, and then take your number 3 planers, and instead of just setting them at the boat and then letting line out, don't trip the planers. Set them in the water so they just drag at the surface. And then let line out until you're looking at your spoon and it's like 5-10 feet in front of where the number 1 planer lines enter the water. All right, now here's why we're going to do it this way. A lot of times, you guys who've trolled for mackerel or trolled with planers, you're going to know this. A lot of times the fish will take a swipe at the spoon, miss, but trip the planer. Then what happens? Planer rises up to the surface, spoon rises up to the surface. If that spoon on that forward line, that number 3 planer, if that comes up behind where the line on the number 1 planer enters the water, you're going to get the big giant multi-line tangle mess. That's what's going to happen next. That spoon's going to be on the surface, fluttering around. It's going to grab the line on the number 1 planer and just create total line chaos. It's tragic. And you're going to spend the next 15 minutes cutting stuff and trying to retie and make new leaders and get everything back in the water. It'll take out 2 lines in a heartbeat. But if you send that number 3 back on the surface and look at it, and you know that if that thing trips when it comes up to the surface, the spoon will be forward of where that number 1 line enters the water. You're not in danger of having that kind of a total tangle disaster, right? You're safe from it. So always set your forward lines, your bigger planers in that method, and then you know that when it trips, you're going to be safe. If a number 1 trips, you're safe anyway, because it's way back there. It's behind the other lines. Number 3s versus number 1s, you know, or number 2s, it's kind of a toss-up. You really never know which is going to be the most effective. I like to do 1s and 3s, and I don't really usually touch the 2s unless I'm not catching fish and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Maybe I'll send back a 2 way back in the center or something like that. But, you know, a 4-line spread is a small spread, but it's a safe spread. And if the mackerel are there and you go through them, you're going to catch them. You know, don't worry about having 50,000 lines out. It's not that big a deal. It really isn't. If you've got a couple of different planers at a couple of different depths and you go through the mackerel, something's going to get hit. All right, Chris, you want to take us to the next slide, please? Thank you. Here is a blue fish. You can hardly tell in this, but again, it's being held by Mr. Ditmars. So blues are, you know, as to whether or not enough will be up here in a couple weeks to really target them, I just can't say. I can tell you they are catching some down south. The farthest north I've heard of blues so far is kind of the Salmons to Point Lookout zone, and it hasn't been big numbers. It's been one here and one there. The good news is there have been some bigger fish. We've been hearing about some 4-pounders mixing around out there, so that's good. If you troll at max speed, you are not likely to catch a whole bunch of blues. You'll pick up one here and there, but for the most part, you're not going to get them. If you want to target them, take it back a click. Drop maybe, 20-30% of your speed. If that max speed is 8.1, take it back to like 7.2, something like that, and you'll start catching the bluefish. All right, Chris, go ahead and take us to the next slide. This one's a surprise. This actually happened. Hopefully you can see. Make that big, Chris, will you? Let's make it big so people can see. This is a black sea bass. This was last August, just a little bit north of the gas docks. And we were actually trolling for cobia. We were trolling tubes, and we didn't have a lot of luck right at first. And we thought, well, let's put out something different. Let's put out a spoon. So we threw out a spoon just to see what would happen, see if we could pick up a Mackerel blue, whatever. And this black sea bass bit. It was behind a #1 planer. I mean, go figure. It just goes to show you never know what's going to bite next when you're fishing on the Chesapeake Bay or in the Mid-Atlantic region. It was a crazy catch, but there you go. Now, I can't see it on my screen as well as I was hoping. Hopefully y'all can see it. This is a silver spoon with some chartreuse flash tape on it. It's not normally going to be my very top pick when I'm trolling, hoping for mackerel or blues. I really like the golds for mackerel in particular. In my opinion, a gold spoon just kind of can't be beat. But there are days. These are fish we're talking about, people. There are days when you just don't know if they're going to go for the silver or the chartreuse tape on the silver. Sometimes that yellow, orange, red pattern. I don't know what the exact name is. Maybe someone can chime in if they know. I think there's a word for it. But there's so many crazy color names now. It's hard to tell. It's probably like nuclear electric exploded chicken. I don't know. But that red, yellow, orange pattern is really effective sometimes. Normally, what I'm going to do if I'm going out for mackerel, I'll put out 2 golds and 2 something elses. 1 gold will be on a #1, 1 gold will be on a #3, and then I'll have 2 something elses, 1 on a 1, 1 on a 3, and we will just see what works. And then I'm switching stuff out to match whatever gets bit. So if I have a chartreuse tape out and that one gets bit and nothing else is getting bit, you can bet I'm going to throw out another chartreuse spoon of some sort and try that out. If the gold's getting bit over and over and nothing else is, I might switch the other 2 over to gold. You got to constantly rotate, change, until you find out what's working, what the fish really want. All right, go ahead and take us to the next one, Chris. So this here is a cobia, as you can tell. This is the same guy, different day, as was just holding that sea bass. That's my buddy Jack. And summer trolling for cobia is another awesome option. I can't tell you for sure they'll come up as far as they did last year, but last year they were north of Salmons. They were just north of where the gas docks are, and there's some live bottom there on the east side. And if you want to troll for the cobe, they will hit spoons. They do. But if you want to troll for the cobe, what you really want to do is you really want to pull a big red, pink, green, or yellow hose, surgical hose lure. They like those fake eels. Now, last year, reds and pinks were the ticket. I don't know if that'll be the trick again this year. Honestly, the cobia fishing, I went cobia fishing Monday and Tuesday, and I talked to a lot of guys down at the Point Lookout ramp. The trollers really didn't do it. In fact, I didn't talk to any troller who caught one, even one. But that's not to say that something will change later in the season and trolling will come back onto its own. There was a time period last year where the trollers were doing really, really well. But as of this week, it was eels. It was live eels on bottom and a chum slick that was really doing it. Sightcasters haven't been doing well either, but it's not their fault. It's because the south wind we've had has just constantly been keeping the water riled up. kind of made sight fishing really, really tough, unfortunately. Anyway, if you're going to troll the eels, you're going to put them behind, again, 1, 2, or 3 planers. Again, you want the swivels in there because the eels make that same, they have that same spinning motion. They'll make that same big giant mess if you don't treat them right. So you want those swivels in there. Of course, you're going to use a heavier leader with the mackerel. We're talking a 30-pound fluoro. With the cobia, you want a 50, 60-pound fluoro. Probably 60 because, take us to the next slide if you would please, Chris. With that planer in there, you got to leader these fish in by hand. I know it's kind of tough to see, but that is a cobia on the end on a red hose. And once you get that planer up, you're going to have to go hand over hand over hand for 15, 20 feet with a very serious, aggressive, powerful sea creature on the end of the line. Cobia do not mess around. They're nothing to play with. If you wrap that lead around your hand without a glove on, it's going to cut you. If you don't give it its head when it wants it, it's going to break that line and prove like whatever pound test it is. So go to a heavier leader. Excuse me. Run it behind the planer and prepare yourself to leader that fish. And side note, just because you can see the 140s on Jack's boat, that's what he chose to go with too. And they're just beautiful machines. All right, Chris, go ahead and take us to our next slide. All right, you haven't interrupted me. Do we really have no questions yet? I'm like waiting for the interruption. Wait, we have a question.
Well, we do have. They're lining up. I was just letting you roll.
Oh, God, okay. Well, let's go through this last slide, and then we'll get to it. Because this is a critically important slide. Again, let's make it big. There it is. All right, that's my son, Max. That's last year on my boat. You see in his left hand a rockfish, of course. When you're trolling for mackerel, even at these high speeds sometimes, every now and again, you're going to catch a rockfish. Now, last year, that was great. You throw it in the box. This year, our 2-week closure, July 16th through the end of July, that's not going to be a legal fish. And, I know I'm just preaching to the choir here, people, but it is just super, hyper, critically important that we release these fish in as good and healthy a manner as we possibly can. The last thing in the world anybody wants to do is kill one of these fish by accident when you can't keep it and watch it float away dead. So we know from the latest studies that the hotter the air temperature is, the lower the fish's chances of survival are if you remove it from the water. 90 degrees is kind of a critical cutoff point. Once it gets over 90 degrees out, if you lift that rockfish out of the water, even if you get the hook out and get it back in quick, that fish's chances of survival plummet. So what you're going to want to do is get a long-handled dehooker or lean way over the side, get the hook out of that fish while it's in the water next to the boat and just let it go. Okay? Don't net them. God, don't net them. Don't bring them in the boat if at all possible. And just for the sake of argument, when you are netting fish, remember those nylon knotted nets are not good for the fish. They scrape away the slime. The slime is the fish's immune system. It prevents infection. You want to have one of the nets with rubber-coated mesh that eliminates those knots that stick out, the knotted nylon. It's much, much better for the fish. And, you can say whatever you want about why the fishery is the way it is, about how it's regulated. Lord knows we've all got plenty of opinions and complaints. The bottom line is none of us want to kill a fish we're not going to take home and eat, right? So do your best to keep those rockfish in the water and let them go without taking them out. Okay. All right, Chris, what kind of questions we got?
All right. Let's do this. First question, actually, from the D train. What size rods to be using?
What size rods? Okay. Well, honestly, that's a matter of personal opinion as long as it can handle a planer. Okay. A really light rod really can't handle one of those planers. Certainly not a number 3. What I like to use, hold on a sec. Don't go anywhere, everybody. Hold on a sec. It's show and tell time. what I like to use is this is a Shimano Travala. Brand doesn't really matter, but you can see it's a fairly short, thin rod, but it's got a lot of beef in the tip. It's actually medium heavy action. And I can put a number 3 planer on this. I don't really like to. Sometimes I'll take a heavy rod for the 3s, but you can put a 3 on this. A 1 is no problem. A 2 is no problem. And the beauty of this rod is when you put a modern jigging style reel in there, you can load this up with 40 or 50-pound braid, and you can stick it to the fish. I mean, this thing can take a ton of pressure. Whoa, hit my lights. So, you know, again, it's a matter of personal preference. I know plenty of guys who simply take their spring rockfish rods, and that's what they troll for mackerel, and that's just fine. You know, not everybody wants to go buy a ton of gear. But as long as it can hold a planer, you're going to be okay.
Cool. Next one's from Luke. He wants to know if there's any changes to the limit and sizes here, and he's referring to max.
To mackerel. Okay. Not so far as I know. Now, it does seem these days like you basically have to check the regs the night before you go fishing to be safe, right? Because they just boom, boom, boom. They're always changing so fast. But I don't believe there have been any changes to mackerel. I certainly haven't heard of anything.
Okay.
In Maryland or Virginia.
And I heard you cover this a little bit, but maybe you want to give a little more detail about the setup for in using
Mixed and surgical hose for Cobia. Okay. So, Kevin, the answer is yes. And like I mentioned earlier, I'll put a spoon out with the eels. I won't put an eel out with the spoons when I'm focused on mackerel. And the reason is because of the speed you're going for the mackerel. Those hoses spin like crazy, even with the swivels. If you try and pull a hose at speeds over 8 miles an hour, you're very likely to get a massive tangle. And you're not real likely to catch a cobia. When you're trolling for the cobia, you're usually doing more like 5 miles an hour. So you're not likely to get them. Now, if there are cobia around and you want to target the cobia, but you want a shot at other stuff, yeah, throw the spoon back there. It's not like mackerel never hit a slower moving spoon, and certainly blues and rock. They will. It's just we're talking about what's most effective here. And at that slower speed, you can troll all kinds of stuff without a problem, and you absolutely get in a shot at the mackerel and the blues that way. Unfortunately, for that 2-week period, at the rockfish as well, you can't really help it. But you know that's an okay mix. I'll also say it is quite common when you find mixed schools of mackerel and bluefish churning water. I mean, they're going crazy on bait. Again, not so much bunker. We're talking bay anchovies here. When you see that scenario and you've got birds working and everything's going crazy, it's a good idea if you've caught some mackerel. You know, you've got, let's say you want to take home a couple. You got 4, 5, 6 in the box. It's a good idea to pull back the throttles a little bit and put those hoses back there, because quite often cobia will kind of be prowling around. If you're in an area where there are cobia, they like to sort of hover around that frenzy. They're usually not right in the middle of it. You'll get them on the periphery, troll around the school of breaking fish. And this cobia are just kind of meandering around looking for an easy freebie. You know, they're looking for the bait that got injured, the fish that got bit and is having trouble swimming. They're looking for an easy meal. And then they see that hose go by and they go, ooh, eel, boom.
Okay. All right. Cray Ramsey.
Hey, Craig. I sometimes have trouble with my planers resetting during a fight with Spanish Max, losing the fish. Yeah. I wish I had the answer for you, man. Planers are kind of a pain in the butt. Sometimes they're tough to reset. They are. Give that jerk, let it go slack. I've seen some guys who pull the rod back and they think that's going to set it. It's not pulling it back that sets it. It's the slack immediately after pulling it back that sets it. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get this ring. When it's not set, this ring is right here. You're pulling it along. You're trying to give some slack so this weight on the front of the planer drops and the ring goes up. Now we're set, right? See the ring right there? Now we're pulling against the actual planer. So if you don't give it that slack, if you just pull back, it just does this the whole time. You got to give it that slack, let that weight drop down, ring slides up, and now we're on. sometimes it is a pain in the butt. Honestly, who knows why? Every now and again, you have one that just refuses to set, and you end up having to reel the dang thing in and mess with it. And, I wish I had a better answer for you. I'm sorry I don't. It's just one of the things you got to deal with. By the way, Craig, I'm looking at that little picture that pops up with you, and that is one heck of a gorgeous mahi. You're making me jealous right there.
Oh yeah, it is. Jeez. Let's go to Ace.
I'm new to fishing the Middle Bay near Annapolis. Is there a topwater bite still, or has that ship sailed? So, hasn't sailed entirely. Daybreak and sunset, you can still get a topwater bite, but it ain't gonna last long. We're talking like the first hour light, the last hour light. That's gonna be it until we get to like late September, probably early October. Then it'll pick up again when the temperatures drop and the water chills out. It'll pick up again. But right now, it is very limited. And that's not just true near Annapolis. It's true all over the place. If you read the reports, I've been seeing this for 3-4 weeks in a row now. For the guys up north on the flats, they've had a good topwater bite really all season since the spring. They've had a nice topwater bite. But it's been pretty limited to daybreak and sunset. And kind of the hotter the weather is, the more true that's going to be. You know, that sun gets up in the sky, they're just not as interested in being in the shallows. They're not as interested in looking up, you know. So that's, you know, yeah, it can be done. Limited time span. After like 8 a.m., not even that, maybe 7:30 if I'm going out. I'm going to be switching to jigs. But, you know, you do have a shot still.
Cool. So do we have a special chart for Cobia?
Oh, so, okay. So, you know, kind of, sort of, maybe not. It's an open book. I've yet to talk to anybody who's found any specific speed that they can say that's Cobia speed. It's not like max speed with what Walt did. That's for sure. I'll troll around 5.5. I might try kicking it up to 6 if I'm not getting bit. I might try pulling it back to 4 and see if that makes a difference. You know, it varies. The Cobia have the capability of catching anything you're trolling. You know, honestly, if you were trolling at 10 knots, I'm sure they could catch it if they really wanted to. I think the bigger question here is what depth are those planers running at? Because, you know, a planer will go deeper, 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 deeper. At some point, as you go faster, 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 it starts to rise up a little bit again. And the range that the planers dive to is pretty broad. Don't quote me on this. I could be wrong. I'm not looking at the numbers. I'm talking off the top of my head. But I think a number 1 dives to, like, I think the range they give is like 8 to 15 feet. I mean, it's a wide range. And that's going to depend to a good degree on the speed you're doing. So if the Cobia are all swimming around, you know, 10 feet down, and you're going too fast and you pull that planer up to 8 feet, you might not get a bit as much as if, you know, you're going a little slower and you put it right in front of their nose. But again, I've never encountered anyone who's claimed to have the specific speed. If you're going 5 to 6 miles an hour, I think you're safe. You know, it's a safe zone to work with. But again, if you're not getting bit, try pulling it back a click. Try moving it up a click. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they go, the right trolling speed is X, and then they never do anything else. Because these are fish we're talking about, people. I don't care what kind of fish you're talking about. There's going to be a day when you've got them figured out and they do something different. And so if you're trolling and doing what always works and you're not catching, do something different, because that might be what works on that day. You know, that might be the ticket.
All right, we're going to move on to Alex. A little off topic.
Right. Off topic. All right, we can go off topic. I like off topic. Any tips for choosing a night spot when running to a bridge is too far? Hung my green light under the boat Tuesday night at the mouth of the West River and attracted almost no bunker. That's kind of a shocker right there, because usually you put that green light down and, man, it's swarming with bunker. Now, if you're coming out of the west, I'll tell you right now, I don't like fish nearly as much as I used to. Honestly, I just don't have the same energy I did when I was younger, and I'm not hip to being up to 2 o'clock in the morning anymore. But when I would set out the greenie, what I would always do is I would try and intersect it with an artificial light source. Okay? On the South River, we have the Route 2 bridge going over the south. That's what I would usually do because it's my backyard. And I can tell you right now, if you go to the South River Bridge, look at where the artificial light makes a light line, right? You see the light hitting the water and where it disappears. Go outside of the light and set up so that your green, your light line disappears right at the edge of where the artificial light coming off the bridge disappears. You want to make them intersect right at the edges. And it might take a little playing around with the anchor. You might have to pull a couple times and reposition to figure out just how to get it to work. But when you do that, and then you start casting to where those two light lines intersect, that can be absolute magic. Now, what I used to do, you mentioned the bunker. What I used to do is I take the cast net and I put out the night light. And usually the night bite doesn't get really good till like an hour or more after the sun goes down. So what I would do is I would wait for the bunker to come around the boat, throw the cast net, get live peanut bunker, put some in the live well, take the hook, put it through the peanut bunker, flip him out by that light line. Man, it usually doesn't take long for him to get eaten. The rockfish are there, they're prowling around, they want them. So I would try that if I were you. I am honestly surprised the Mouth of the West didn't bring in some fish. I would have guessed that it would. I haven't tried that lately, but there are bunker around. I'm a little bit surprised at that. But try that Route 2 bridge, or another thing that really works well, has worked well for me in the past, is intersecting with the light lines coming off the ships that anchor out off Annapolis. They're required by law to have very strong deck illumination, and they also make an artificial light line, which often just hordes of fish come into. The only problem there is some of those guys get bored and they start fishing off the ship. And I have gone up there before and had like 5 guys on either side of the ship fishing right off the ship. And then there was nowhere I could anchor safely and drop my lights and fish around the ship. So that can happen. But give it a shot. The Route 2 bridge, I think, will surprise you.
Cool. Jay.
Hey Jay, have you had any breaking fish? So I have encountered some breaking fish. I've encountered them just south of the Bay Bridge on the east side along the edge. I'm talking just a couple 100 yards south, right up by the bridge. And also about 1/8 of a mile south of Poplar Island and 20 feet of water. But, and this is a big but, every single one of these fish has been like that. They've been 14-inch stripers, which is absolutely positively not what I want to be catching right now. Not just because they're little fish, but also because, I don't believe MRIP's 9% mortality catch and release figure. I think it's a joke, frankly. Their numbers are god-awful, and it's based on science that is, the study they base it on says don't base it on this. It can't get any worse. However, some ratio of these little fish that you catch are going to die. You're going to kill some. If you catch 20, 30 of them, you're probably going to kill one. And the truth of the matter is all these breaking fish have been little, and you could sit there and catch 100 of them in a day if you wanted to. Personally, I think it's the wrong move, right? You're going to end up killing some fish. So I haven't seen anything of a decent size breaking water. Everything I've seen has been really small. And honestly, I think that's likely to continue. Summertime is not the best time for breaking fish. It's probably going to be late September, early October before we see any fish of real size showing at the surface.
Cool. All right.
Should Mac be bled before putting in the box? Any tips how? Interesting question, Lee. It's not a fish that I bleed. Some people swear that each and every fish doesn't matter. Bleed it, it'll be better. Personally, I don't think so, but that's just me. If you want to bleed them, it's very simple with most fish. Just cut the collar right below where the head goes under the gills and attaches to the body. If you cut it right there, that normally kind of does the trick, make a bloody mess, but it certainly should work. I will say this about Max: treat them like bluefish. Don't freeze them. Don't freeze them. This is a fish that you really need to eat fresh. You can smoke them and make fish dip. It's phenomenal. But you don't want to freeze mackerel. It's a waste of fish, honestly. Well, my opinion, it's a waste of fish, but to each their own.
Cool. We got another question from Ace, scale mold modeling.
Is it better? I hate that. I gotta.
Do I have to read these to you?
Better. I'm back and it depends on how long it is. Sometimes, Is it better for the fish to change trebles to inline singles on plugs? Absolutely. Funny you should ask that. Look, this is sitting on my desk. I have a bag. I've got another bag in my closet over there. I've started switching them all over. The trebles on plugs are just, if you fish, they do a number on the fish. Every now and again, you'll get a little fish on there, and it'll have like 2 hooks in the lower jaw and 1 in the upper jaw. You can't even open its mouth to get the hook out. That fish, you're going to have trouble making it so that fish is going to survive. So, yeah, absolutely. Now, are you going to miss some strikes? You bet you will. You absolutely will hook fewer fish. And you know what? Every time a fish takes a swipe at that plugs and miss, you should feel good about it. Because you can tell yourself, okay, I missed a hit, but you know what? I'm killing fewer fish by accident. It's a worthy trade-off, for sure.
Okay.
I tried for Cobia the first time myself out of Jane's Island. Is chumming my best bet? If you have not fished, oh hey Fred, hey, how you doing? I didn't realize that was you. Yeah, absolutely. If you have not fished from before, that is your best bet. Trolling is a close second. Sight fishing is tough, but if you're gonna, yeah, absolutely. And I would say make sure you get some live eels. They're probably the best bet for you. Some days the cobia do like the bunker chunk even more than the eel. Usually they like the eel more, but you never know. And there are days when we got 1 on a bunker chunk Tuesday, but we got 2 on eel. But setting up with the chum is by far the best way. Now, you've fished with me before. You've cobia fished, so you've seen how I do it. I would do something similar. Get the chum, get something you can put the chum in that's weighted, that you can drop down to the bottom, and then pull in 1 foot and cleat off so it shakes, and you get the chum dispersal right down there near the bottom. And set a couple eels on bottom, maybe a bunker chunk, and then take an unweighted eel, no weight at all, just cast it off to the side of the boat, let out some extra line, stick in the holder, let him be. Let him do his thing. Often it's the eels right on bottom that do the trick, but sometimes that unweighted guy, wherever he goes, he does his thing. Sometimes he's the one that gets eaten. That's what happened Monday. We got a 50-incher on the unweighted eel, and the weighted eels didn't catch. So, you never know. But yeah, that is absolutely what I would try. I would also just add to that, if rays are being a real hassle, you may want to do away with the bunker chunk. I still like to have it down there. I'll deal with the eels as soon as the rays. As soon as I identify one as a ray, I'm going to my reel and I'm cranking that drag down 100% all the way and just trying to break that thing off or horse it to the boat and get it off the hook so that I can get rid of the ray without tangling lines. Because if you try and fight it like a regular fish, half the time it'll go around your other lines and then you're back to the big mess cutting and re-rigging. So good luck. I hope you get them. Take some pictures. Send them to me.
There you go. Fred, striking out with Spanish out of Ocean City, Maryland. Where would you go?
I'm going to guess you're on a trailer. If you're going to OC and going specifically for Mac, you probably got a trailer. Right now, I would hang a right-hand turn in OC and get down to the Cape Charles zone. The reports have been really good. This is the second week in a row. Really good reports on Spanish from Cape Charles up to and beyond the Cell, up to the Tangier. But, they entered the bay a couple weeks ago in low numbers. Those low number areas have now transitioned up the bay all the way up to Tangier Point Lookout. And the bigger numbers moving in behind them are now down towards the Cape Charles area. Now, if you're not going to fish for 2 weeks, heck, I'd say, anywhere from Point Lookout to Cape Charles could be good. They're going to keep moving up. I hope they should keep moving up. Hard to say for sure, but they should. I'm actually a little surprised you haven't gotten any out of OC. I would think you get some. The Virginia beach boats are getting them trolling in front of Sandbridge. OC is not that far away. You should be able to get them out of OC, I would think, at any time now, really. I can't say I've had any reports of inshore boats trolling them up there, but that should be happening anytime.
Okay. Gary wants to know if you can use inline weights instead of planers.
Gary, I'm sorry, it just does not have the same effect. Yeah. It really doesn't. You can put 10 ounces, put 15 ounces of lead on a line, and if you troll it at 8.5 miles an hour, it's just not going to get down there the same way a planer can. You'd have to let out a mile. Sorry.
Okay, moving on.
Some guys do put out, 1 or 2 in the mix. They're rarely the productive one. This planers really do a good job. What length leader behind planers for Cobia and hoses same as Mac? 15, 18 feet, something like that is a good length to go behind the planer. I do know some guys who use less behind the number 3s up front in particular. They might only go 10 feet. But I like that. I like having that at least 15. 20's not out of line.
All right. Mark wants to know what's the best bottom rig for Cobia.
Oh, hold on a minute. I got one right here. Hold on. This is one I was using the other day. So you've got here we go. 8/0 circle hook. I think that's a Mustad, but don't hold me to it. We're on a 40-pound fluorocarbon leader, and this is a small hook for a Cobia. That 8/0. It's not a big hook. I like that small for one simple reason. When you put it through the eel, if you don't have giant eels, the bigger hooks will sometimes split their jaw, and sometimes you'll kill the eel putting it on. And eels are expensive and hard to keep alive. And if you have a dozen, it's not always enough for the whole day. So I like that thin hook for the eel lines. On my bunker rods, I do use a bigger one. I'm not sure I have any right here. I don't have any really handy. I do use a thicker hook, a 9/0, a 10/0, because the bunker you can put on anything that doesn't really matter. It doesn't hurt anything. That leader is maybe 4 feet long. You don't want it so long that when you raise the rod tip and that rod's bending way over, you can't get that fish up for the net. Okay? A 5-inch leader with some rods, you're kind of pushing the limit. So I go about 4 feet. I use a spider hitch to tie a loop in the end right there, right? Just a fisherman's on the hook, spider hitch to tie a loop, and then I'm clipping that onto a swivel on the end of my main line. And I do that because a lot of times with these rigs, this rod that I grabbed before is what I was using. What I'll do is I'll have a egg sinker in line and then a swivel, and then I'll clip to the rig so the egg sinker hits the swivel. And I usually do that with a pair of 1-inch egg sinkers like this one was. 1 inch. A pair of 1-ounce egg sinkers and a pair of 3-ounce egg sinkers. And then that way in the current, my lines will get held away from each other. The 1 ounce goes positioned down current of the 3-ounce. And then the current sweeps it back some and they stay away, and hopefully they don't get tangled.
All right, Matt Schultz. Matt's going to spend a week.
Woo!
Point lookout. What are you? What's the technique for Cobia?
So, you know what, Matt? If you're going to be there for a week, man, why don't you try it all? Seriously. Try coming for him one day. Try trolling for him one day. Now, like I said, this past week, no question in my mind, chumming with eels in the mix was hands down the productive tactic. Like I said, I didn't talk to a troller who got one. Doesn't mean it's going to be the same the first week of August. There was like 3 weeks here last summer where the trollers were doing better than anybody. But try it all, you know. Now, I will say a word about sight fishing. If sight fishing is much more difficult. First, you got to spot the fish. Then when you spot the fish, only half the time do they attack. You can put a lure or sometimes even a live eel right in front of their nose, and half the time they're going to turn around and swim away. And if you don't have a boat with a tower of some sort, you're never going to see these fish. From deck level, you could drive around all day, and you might never spot one. So I would not spin my wheels trying that. Now, if you have a tower, something you get up high, then sight fishing is a lot of fun. I mean, nothing is more fun than literally looking at a fish, throwing, and watching it chase and attack. You know, it's a blast. So if you got the tower, go for it. But if you don't, I wouldn't do it. Where is, okay, hold on one sec. Hold on one sec. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to run over here to my other rod rack that's off camera. This is something I love for sight fishing. Oh, man. The rod butt is going to hit the window before I can get into the camera view. There we go. Okay. What we have there is an 1.5 ounce skirted jig head in white with a lime green striper sniper behind it. Really good lure for throwing at the cobia. You take a bucktail. You can take a bucktail and put a BKD on the back. That'll work really good. But I like to give them a lot of color contrast, right? That lime and that white. A pink is a really good pick sometimes. You just kind of never know. Anytime I go sight fishing, I'm likely to have at least 3 different lures like that rigged up at the same time so that different people can throw different things and we see what works. You know, you just never know on any given day what's going to prove best. You can also throw eels when you're sight casting. Very effective. Hard to cast an eel. Hard to cast an eel. In order to throw an eel to cobia, you got to get pretty close. And again, having that tower is just critical. But you know, I'd say try trolling, try chumming, try them both. Like I said to the earlier question, if you have no experience actually doing it, chumming and putting eels out is probably your highest likelihood of actually hooking into cobia.
Cool. Now, this is a really important question. You got 3,000 hours outboard.
How many miles do you have on your truck from fishing all over the bay? That's pretty funny.
Well, you had to get a new truck.
I think my truck has like 50K on it, something like that. My engines are well over 3,000 hours. What happened was the engine hour meter gave up the ghost maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So we'd have to plug them into the computer to figure out exactly. It's probably closer to 4,500. They got some hours on it.
Nice. All right, we go. Kevin wants to know
the big ones.
The big ones, yeah.
Big ones. I think they're 24 inches. Is that right? I might be wrong. Someone can correct me on it. I think the big ones are 24 inches. They might be 22, but I think they're 24. They're stick around as your finger, not the little ones.
Okay.
They'll hit the little ones, but you're not giving them nearly as much to spot in the water. And these fish are not worried about something being too big for them to eat. You know, that's not an issue. So the big ones. I should mention, I should have mentioned this earlier. I meant to when in the initial presentation when we were talking trolling tubes. Before you put that surgical hose over the side, take the hook, put it through the eye, twist it into a figure 8, and give it a tug. Okay? Let it over the side, hold it, and make sure it's swimming. If it's dragging, no good. You want it swimming through the water. If it's dragging, take it out, put the hook through the eye, give it another twist and tug. That's what kind of puts that bend into them that makes them do their thing.
Okay. So we got about 5 minutes left, Lenny. So we're going to go into our lightning round.
Ooh.
All right. Here we go.
We have a bunch of questions. Good, great.
Yeah, they're lining up.
Go to nut for leader sets for Cobia. Leader weight, thanks. Leader, 40-pound fluoro on a heavier rig. If I think there are big ones around, I might go to 50. I'm usually cool with 40. Knot is going to be a fisherman's at the hook and a spider hitch making the loop in the end, clipped on the swivel. Boom.
Boom.
Best way to get a surgical. Okay, we just covered that. We just covered that. Hook through the eye, twist figure 8, tug. Boom.
Right. Just some nice words. Todd wants to let you know that you're spot on with that Cobia size net. So.
Oh, nice, awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's an awesome net. That's that thing. I've never had a better landing net.
There we go. Trolling patterns for Max and Blues.
Trolling patterns for Max and Blues. Go after the fish. There's no really specific set pattern, but normally when you're going after the Max and the Blues, you're going to see some kind of surface action, right? You're going to see some birds working. You're going to see some churning. Just head right for it. Head right for it. It's best if you skirt the school instead of going right through the middle. That will send the fish down quite often. Fact of the matter, in this day and age, in the upper and middle Chesapeake, not so much in the lower, and then again when you're down towards Virginia Beach, these heavily trafficked areas where there are going to be a ton of guys fishing, often you kind of have to go through the middle because there's so many boats that somebody else is going to do it. And if you don't, you're not going to catch the fish. And then someone else is going to do it and send the school down. So you kind of have to do it anyway. School disappears. Now you're going into a spiral pattern, wider and wider. The whole time you're doing that, as you're searching to relocate the fish, someone on that boat's got binoculars or scanning all around. Birds, 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 birds. Where are my birds?
Cool.
Boom.
Good job.
Oh boy, I'm gonna need the glasses for this one.
Yeah, just the first part. Do Max ever come into the south?
Okay, that's cool. That's a cool catch. Occasionally, rare occasions. Last year, actually, I got one inside the South River, not far in, off of Mayo Beach. Doesn't happen much, but it happens. I mean, hey, this is a Chesapeake Bay we're talking about, and these are fish we're talking about. You never know what the heck they're going to do. I was actually bottom fishing for weak fish like 20 years ago and caught a Spanish Mac on a chunk of soft crab on the bottom in 35 feet of water. Go figure.
There you go. All right. There's again.
Mix a deep diving lure on a 3-way with a spoon. Can you? Sure. Might you make a giant tangle mess? I don't know. That's something I've never particularly tried. It would worry me a little bit, especially if you're trolling fast for Max. If you're trolling slower for Blues and Rock, it wouldn't necessarily worry me so much. But I certainly see the potential for a gigantic tangle disaster there. It's certainly a possibility.
All right. Nice. Sorry.
Yeah, we got a slew of questions tonight.
I know. I'm trying to get to them all.
Please, yes.
There we go. Mike was talking about
Able to keep
your weights.
Oh yeah. Well, now we were fishing north of the target ship. In that area, the current doesn't run so strong. Now, if you're fishing at the CBBT, you're going to need more weight. You're going to have more current. It depends on where you are and what you're doing. Chumming at Windmill Point, you're not likely to encounter so much that it won't work. I would ask, how deep are you? Okay, I would ask that because you really, when you're chumming for cobia, you want to be between like 20 and 25 feet. If you're having trouble holding bottom because you're in 40 feet of water, you have a different issue to worry about. You're too deep. I'm not saying you'll never catch a cobia doing it that deep, but that's not the prime cobia chumming zone. It's 20, 25 feet. It's surprisingly shallow, and you want to be on the edge of a bigger drop off or on some kind of live bottom. or something like that.
Okay. And coming in, sorry, it jumped on me.
What?
Nothing.
What was your first boat? Oh my God. My first personal boat was a 19-foot cruise craft, which lasted for exactly 5 trips before the outboard blew the power head. It was not a good purchase.
Wow.
I bought it very used. I think it was a 1972, if I remember correctly. Oh, wait. Oh, actually, that's not even right. No, sorry. Before I bought that, I had a 14-foot Sears Game Fisher with a cracked hull side that was very sloppily fiberglass back together. And I had the Leisure Life Bass Tender prior to the cruise craft. You're taxing my memory here, Mason. We're going way back here. And then, of course, there were Dad's boats, which I ran as if they were my boat, but they were not actually my boat.
Got it. Well, and that wraps it up, Lenny.
Woo! Okay.
Yeah. Hold on one second. Oh, there I am.
Hey, there we go.
Cool. That was great. We had a lot of questions. We had a lot of people tuning in. Nice to have the refresher. And Zach early on put the link up to the article that's on fishtalkmag.com about all this with the max speed. So check that out. Check out the Suzuki deal, and we'll be back with you.
Rockin'. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah. We'll see you again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll let you know the topic once we figure that out. All right. Take care.
I'm back on.
All right. Good night, Lenny.
See ya.